There's a silent language that transcends words, one only keen eyes can decipher. An ancient communication that lives on in each of us, even in this age of instant messages and digital connections. What if I told you someone close to you is constantly sending subtle signals, revealing you're on their mind? We're not talking grand gestures, but the tiny details easily missed in our fast-paced lives. Little clues that speak volumes. Ever notice how some people seem to sync their breathing with yours when they're nearby, like an invisible dance, connecting your bodies without a word? Or how someone's eyes subtly light up when you enter a room? These are just a few of the many signals we'll uncover today, subtle indicators that you're constantly in someone special's thoughts. The human mind, that infinite universe of connections and mysteries, always finds ways to express what the heart feels, even when we try to hide it. It's fascinating how our subconscious manifests through small gestures, fleeting glances, and almost imperceptible changes in behavior. We're expressive beings, even when trying to contain our deepest emotions. The body speaks when the mouth is silent. Since ancient times, even before verbal language fully developed, our ancestors communicated through these subtle signals. Noticing unspoken intentions, silent interests, and invisible connections was a matter of survival. Today, in our hyper-connected society, we've paradoxically lost much of this natural ability to read between the lines. We're so absorbed in our screens and worries that we fail to notice what's literally right in front of us. Who was the first person that popped into your head as you read these words? The one who, perhaps without your conscious awareness, has shown these small signs of constant interest. Maybe your heart already recognizes these signals before your rational mind processes them. There's an intuitive wisdom within us that often picks up on these subtle messages long before we can logically analyze them. Leave a comment with the first name or initial that came to mind. This simple reflection might be the start of a profound discovery about connections you may not have realized existed with such intensity. What I'll share with you today isn't manipulative techniques or seduction games, but a map to navigate the fascinating territory of non-verbal communication and genuine connections that transcend the obvious. It's not about strategizing to attract someone, but awakening your sensitivity to perceive what's already happening around you. It's like learning to see a spectacle of colors that's always been there, but your eyes weren't trained to distinguish. Some of these signs might seem too subtle at first, almost imperceptible in the fast pace of modern life. Others might surprise you with their obviousness once you learn to recognize them. The important thing is to develop this new kind of attention, this more conscious gaze towards the invisible dynamics that permeate our daily interactions. Imagine finally deciphering that feeling that something special is happening, but you couldn't name it. Or understanding why certain interactions seem charged with a meaning that goes beyond the words exchanged. This is the promise of this journey we're starting now. A new understanding of the silent forces that move human hearts, including your own. Ready to see the invisible? Want to recognize the subtle signs that reveal when you're constantly on someone's mind? Let's dive into this fascinating territory where the unspoken often communicates far more than words ever could. When someone thinks about you constantly, your name becomes a special melody on their lips. There's a softness, an almost imperceptible pause before they say it. This is one of the subtlest and most profound signs the human subconscious reveals. Our ancestors already knew the name of someone we love carries a magical, almost sacred power. Pay close attention. This person pronounces your name differently than they do others. Maybe it's a slightly lower tone, a more careful cadence, as if each syllable were a rare jewel being offered to the world. Our brain dedicates a special region to processing the names of people who frequently occupy our thoughts. It's a fascinating evolutionary adaptation dating back to the early days of human language. When your name is mentioned in a group conversation, notice how this person reacts immediately, even if they were distracted seconds before. It's like an invisible antenna is always tuned to the frequency of your name, picking it up even amidst the noise of a crowded room. This constant state of alertness reveals a lot about the space you occupy in this person's mind. Pupils are another silent messenger that never lies. Charles Darwin already noted this phenomenon in his studies on emotional expressions. When we're in the presence of someone who sparks our deep interest, our pupils instantly dilate. A physiological reaction impossible to consciously control. It's the body confessing what the mind might still try to hide. Next time you talk, discreetly observe. Do those eyes widen when they meet yours? This involuntary response is one of the most authentic ways our body has of saying, "You matter to me, you occupy my thoughts." There's also a mysterious synchronicity in movements. The person who constantly thinks about you tends to mirror your postures and gestures without realizing it. This phenomenon, known as mirroring in psychology, happens naturally when we're deeply connected with someone. If you cross your arms, seconds later, this person does the same. If you tilt your head slightly, they follow the movement. It's not conscious imitation, but rather an invisible dance our bodies perform when our minds are in sync. It's as if there's an invisible thread connecting your movements, creating a silent choreography that only very attentive observers can perceive. Body orientation also tells a revealing story. Our body always seeks to align itself in the direction of what occupies our thoughts. It's a basic law of human emotional physics. Notice how, even in a group conversation, this person's body subtly remains oriented towards you. The feet in particular are honest indicators. They instinctively point where we want to go. If their feet are consistently directed towards you, even when the conversation involves several people, you have a powerful sign that you occupy a privileged place in their thoughts. And have you noticed how this person always seems to be, coincidentally, in the same places as you? We're not talking about invasive behavior or stalking, but those casual encounters that seem to happen with curious frequency. Maybe they discover they like the same coffee shop you frequent, or start to take an interest in hobbies similar to yours. This happens because by constantly thinking about you, this person unconsciously seeks opportunities for closeness, trying to create a shared universe where encounters can happen naturally. The human brain is a master at creating coincidences that satisfy its deepest desires. There's also that extraordinary attention to the small details of your life. When someone keeps every bit of information you share in their mind, even the seemingly insignificant stuff, it reveals the space you occupy in their thoughts. Didn't you mention wanting to visit that place? Or that song you mentioned 3 weeks ago? These are memories that show your words weren't just heard. They were treasured, revisited in quiet moments when their thoughts naturally drift to you. Time also behaves peculiarly when we're with someone who constantly thinks about us. Have you noticed how that person never seems rushed in your presence? Like the rest of the world can wait while you share that moment. When we constantly think about someone, we create a sacred space where chronological time loses its tyranny. Notice how they seem totally present, without constantly checking their phone or showing impatience. This quality of attention is increasingly rare in our distracted world, and when offered to you, it reveals a lot about the place you hold in that person's thoughts. Pay attention to their body language when you're near. Someone who constantly thinks about you keeps their body in a state of readiness, as if always prepared to receive any signal from you. Shoulders subtly turned towards you, even when the conversation involves several people, are a silent indicator of this special connection. It's like there's an invisible magnet between you, creating a subtle gravitation that guides that person's entire physical presence in your direction. Neurophysiology teaches us that when we think intensely about someone, our nervous system enters a particular state of positive alertness. Facial muscles become more responsive, posture becomes more open, more receptive. Observe these small signals, a slight leaning towards you when you speak, a more animated, more vibrant facial expression than they show with others. These aren't conscious choices, but automatic manifestations of how you constantly inhabit their thoughts. Another revealing sign lies in unexpected small kindnesses, not elaborate gifts or grand gestures, but those discreet attentions that show genuine care. Maybe it's remembering exactly how you like your coffee or noticing when you got a haircut, even if the difference is minimal. Maybe it's saving the last piece of dessert they know you appreciate or making space for you at an already full table. These gestures seem trivial, but they reveal constant attention and a deep desire to provide small moments of pleasure or comfort. Touch, even the most innocent, also tells a story. When someone constantly thinks about you, those seemingly accidental touches emerge. A brush of hands while passing an object, a brief contact on the arm during a lively conversation. It's as if the body instinctively seeks this physical connection, translating into contact what occupies their thoughts. Skin is our largest sensory organ, and the desire to establish this tactile bridge is one of the most primitive and authentic expressions of interest. Note the frequency of these accidents. They're rarely truly fortuitous. Messages and calls also follow a revealing pattern. Notice not only the frequency, but the times chosen. Messages early in the morning or late at night reveal that you're the first and last thought of the day. And there are those messages with no apparent reason, just to share something trivial that reminded them of you. A song, a phrase from a book, a scene from a movie. They're constantly building these invisible bridges to keep the connection alive, little offerings that say, "You were on my mind just now." How they react when you mention other people is also telling. There's a special attentiveness, a slight shift in posture, maybe a subtle change in their facial expression. It's not necessarily jealousy, but an intensified interest, like any info about your social world is particularly important. It's the natural reflection of someone who, constantly thinking of you, wants to understand your whole universe. There's also a curious synchronicity in interests and preferences. When we constantly think about someone, we tend to value what they value, to get interested in what interests them, not as some calculated imitation, but as a natural expansion of our inner world, to include what's important to whoever's occupying our thoughts. Maybe you'll notice they've started appreciating the same music genre you love, or developed an interest in a topic you casually mentioned weeks ago. If you haven't noticed these signs in your life, maybe it's time to pay closer attention to the interactions around you. Sometimes we're so wrapped up in our own worries that we miss these subtle indicators of a deep connection. Or maybe we're looking for grand gestures of interest when the truth reveals itself in the small details of everyday life. To keep exploring these fascinating patterns of the human mind and discover other revealing signs of the invisible connections surrounding us, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. Every week we dive deep into the human psyche together, uncovering the mysteries that govern our most meaningful relationships. The voice is a powerful vehicle for emotions we often can't control. When someone's constantly thinking about you, their tone of voice subtly changes during conversation. It becomes softer, more melodious, like each word is chosen with special care. This is one of the hardest signs to fake, as it's directly connected to deeper emotions. The ancient Greeks recognized this phenomenon. They called it mellifluous, a voice that flows like honey when we talk to someone occupying our thoughts. Communication experts have observed that our vocal apparatus unconsciously responds to our internal emotional state. Vocal cords relax slightly, creating a warmer, more resonant timbre. The rhythm of speech also changes. It becomes more measured, as if each moment of interaction is too precious to rush. Pay attention. Does this person speak to you differently than they communicate with others? The difference might be subtle, but once you learn to perceive it, it becomes impossible to ignore. Notice also how they react when your name is mentioned by others. There's an instant sparkle in their eye, a shift in posture, like an invisible switch is flipped. Their whole body becomes more alert, more present. This involuntary reflex happens because your name is already constantly circulating in their thoughts. So when someone says it aloud, it's like an internal echo is amplified. Psychologists call this selective orientation response. Our brain is programmed to react with special attention to stimuli that already hold a privileged place in our minds. Coincidences multiply when someone's intensely thinking about you. Suddenly they start liking the same music, become interested in the same books or movies. It's not deliberate imitation, but a fascinating psychological phenomenon. When we constantly think about someone, we tend to value everything connected to that person. It's a way the subconscious creates invisible bridges of identification. Jung called this synchronicity, seemingly unrelated events connecting through an underlying meaning, a mind reaching out to create meaningful connections with the object of its constant thoughts. There are also those moments of sudden vulnerability. The person who usually maintains a confident demeanor might show signs of nervousness around you, a slight tremor in their hands, words stumbling, a subtle blush on their cheeks. This fleeting vulnerability is one of the most authentic signs that you occupy a special place in their thoughts, revealing the emotional impact of your presence. It's like the social mask we all wear daily becomes thinner, more transparent when we're with someone who constantly inhabits our thoughts. And have you noticed how this person seems to pick up on your emotional state, even when you try to hide it? When we constantly think about someone, we develop a heightened sensitivity to that person's mood swings. It's almost like there's an exclusive channel of emotional communication between you. Are you okay? Or is something wrong? Are questions that pop up precisely when you're trying to conceal some inner discomfort. This ability to tune into your emotional state isn't telepathy, but rather the result of constant, attentive observation, a product of you occupying a privileged space in that person's thoughts. Personal space also transforms when we're near someone who constantly thinks about us. Anthropologists have described how each culture defines different zones of acceptable proximity between people. But when we intensely think about someone, we tend to naturally reduce that distance. Notice how this person consistently positions themselves closer to you than to others, creating a kind of shared, intimate bubble. It's not invasive or uncomfortable, but a proximity that feels natural, as if your two energy fields recognize and harmonize with each other. The eyes always seek out what occupies our thoughts first. When you enter an environment where this person is, observe where their gaze first lands. If it's consistently in your direction, even for a fleeting second, you have a powerful sign there. This is an automatic reflex that even the most controlled person can't completely suppress. Anthropologists call this an ocular flash, that brief moment of visual recognition that happens before our conscious brain even processes the information. It's like the eyes have their own intelligence, their own agenda, independent of what we want to show the world. Still on the subject of eye contact, there's a fascinating phenomenon known as ocular triangulation that happens when someone constantly thinks about you. The gaze moves in a specific pattern. It first meets your eyes, then briefly drops to your mouth, and then returns to your eyes. This triangular movement is a neurological signature of romantic interest, as old as humanity itself. It's completely involuntary and reveals far more than carefully chosen words ever could. In your next conversation, observe discreetly. You might witness this silent ballet the eyes perform when faced with someone who constantly inhabits their thoughts. The time dedicated to you is another revealing indicator. It's not just about the quantity, but the quality of that time. When someone constantly thinks about you, there's a total presence in the moments shared. The phone is put aside. External distractions seem to lose importance. It's as if the outside world temporarily disappears, creating a sacred space where only the two of you exist. Greek philosophers called this state kairos, a special kind of time that transcends the chronological, a time filled with meaning and total presence. It's the quality of attention we naturally give to whatever's top of mind. Notice how this person preserves objects or mementos associated with you. Maybe it's a simple note you wrote months ago, carefully tucked away in a drawer, or a photo of you that pops up casually during a phone conversation, or that gift you gave, prominently displayed in their home or office. These subtle shrines are physical manifestations of the space you occupy in their mind. They're tangible anchors for constant thoughts, concrete connection points with someone who regularly inhabits their mental universe. The questions this person asks also tell a silent story. There's a genuine interest in the details of your life, your opinions, your dreams, and most importantly, they remember the answers. Weeks later, they might pick up exactly where the conversation left off, showing that your words weren't just heard, but cherished. You said you wanted to try that restaurant, or how did that meeting you were nervous about go? These aren't casual questions, but manifestations of ongoing thought about you and your life. Neuroscientists explain that our memory is selective. We recall with greater ease and accuracy what's associated with the people who frequently occupy our thoughts. Notice also how this person reacts to your triumphs and challenges. When we constantly think about someone, we develop a deep emotional connection to their experiences. Genuine joy at your successes and authentic concern for your setbacks are signs that you inhabit not just their thoughts, but their heart. It's different from the standard social response, the one we offer out of politeness. There's an authentic emotional resonance, as if their wins and struggles are somehow shared. Psychologists call this resonant empathy, a heightened ability to emotionally vibrate with the experiences of someone who holds a special place in our thoughts. There's also that curious phenomenon of digital synchronicity. Maybe you notice this person is always among the first to view your posts or stories. It's not a coincidence. It's a digital reflection of how you occupy a privileged space in their thoughts. Their finger seems to automatically find its way to any content related to you. Sometimes the comment comes almost instantly, as if they were waiting for that moment of connection. In the fast-paced universe of social media, where attention is the scarcest resource, this consistency reveals a lot about this person's internal priorities. And what about those messages that arrive at the exact moments you're thinking of them? Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to defy casual explanations. When two people constantly think of each other, a field of psychic resonance is created that often manifests in these surprising moments of seemingly telepathic connection. We're not talking about supernatural powers, but rather a depth of attunement so profound that thoughts seem to find invisible pathways between two minds. Notice also how this person responds to your unspoken needs. When we constantly think about someone, we develop a keen sensitivity to their needs and emotional states. Maybe you're cold, and before you even say anything, they offer a jacket. Or they notice you're tired at a social event and naturally create an opportunity for you both to retreat. This ability to anticipate your needs isn't magic. It's the result of constant, attentive observation, fueled by frequent thoughts of you and your well-being. And finally, one of the most subtle and profound signs: how this person respects your space and your silences. When someone thinks of you deeply and respectfully, there's no need to fill every moment with words or actions. There's a comfort in mutual presence, an understanding that transcends verbal communication. Japanese poets celebrated the concept of ma, the meaningful space between things, the eloquent silence that doesn't need to be filled. This kind of silent connection is only possible when we constantly inhabit each other's thoughts, creating a field of understanding that goes beyond words. Subtle shifts in behavior when other people join the conversation are also revealing. Maybe there's a nearly imperceptible shift in posture, a slight change in tone of voice. It's not necessarily jealousy or possessiveness, but a natural recalibration of the energetic field that existed between the two of you. It's as if the presence of others creates a sharper awareness of the special connection you share. Keen observers will notice how this person's gaze keeps seeking yours, as if checking if the invisible connection remains intact even amidst the expanded social dynamic. Gestures of care become more frequent and natural when someone constantly thinks of you. A strand of hair gently tucked away, a crumb discreetly removed from your clothing, a glass of water appearing without you asking when your voice sounds slightly hoarse. These are almost instinctive manifestations of constant thought about your well-being. Neuroscience explains that when we think frequently of someone, the brain circuits associated with care and protection are naturally activated, turning these small gestures into automatic expressions of the space you occupy in that person's mind. Perhaps the most revealing sign of all is that fleeting expression you catch when the person doesn't know they're being observed. A pensive look, maybe with a slight smile, when they believe no one is watching. It's in this moment of unintentional vulnerability that the truth reveals itself most clearly. The resting face naturally assumes the expression of the most frequent thoughts, And if those thoughts are about you, there's a softness, an openness in the expression that tells a story without words. Micro-expressionists, who study fleeting facial expressions, call this an expression of affective contemplation, the relaxed face of someone absorbed in thoughts about someone who evokes deep feelings. Now that you know these revealing signs, allow yourself to observe with fresh eyes the interactions around you. Maybe you'll discover that someone close has been demonstrating these discreet manifestations of interest without you realizing it. Or maybe you yourself are the person unconsciously emitting these signals to someone special. Self-awareness and consciousness of these invisible dynamics allow us to navigate the complex universe of human connections more wisely. Recognizing these subtleties brings transformative power to our relationships, not to manipulate or control, but to cultivate more authentic and profound connections. When we realize we inhabit someone's thoughts, we can choose how to respond to this silent interest, whether by reciprocating or setting healthy boundaries. Awareness always expands our freedom of choice and allows us to act with more intentionality in our interactions. Nonverbal language is, more often than not, more honest than 1,000 spoken words. Our bodies don't lie as easily as our mouths do. When someone's constantly thinking about you, their whole physical being becomes a signal broadcaster, revealing that inner truth. How they breathe, move, look, it all becomes a roadmap straight to the heart of their most frequent thoughts. Ancient masters of human observation knew this. From Chinese sages to Greek philosophers, everyone understood the body always spills the truth we sometimes try to hide, even from ourselves. There's an ancient wisdom in learning to read these signals. In ancestral cultures, interpreting the silent language of the body and emotions was an essential art for survival and strengthening community bonds. Today, in our hyper-connected digital society, we've paradoxically lost much of this ability to perceive what's right in front of our eyes. We spend hours analyzing text messages for hidden meanings, when the most authentic signals are constantly being broadcast through much older, more reliable channels. Recovering this sensitivity to subtle cues is reclaiming a precious dimension of the human experience. It's like learning a universal language that transcends cultures, ages, and social barriers. When you develop this sharp perception, a whole universe of invisible connections reveals itself around you. Conversations gain new layers of meaning, everyday encounters transform into moments of discovery and mutual recognition. It's a richer, fuller way to be present in the world and in relationships. If you've noticed several of these signals in someone close to you, consider what that means to you. Sometimes we're so busy looking for grand gestures and sweeping declarations that we miss the small daily manifestations of genuine affection and interest. These understated displays often carry a depth and authenticity that elaborate words can't express. As Rilke said, love consists of two solitudes, protecting, touching, and greeting each other. And often that touch, that greeting, comes in the form of these silent signals we're discussing today. On the other hand, if you're the one emitting these signals, ask yourself, what's stopping you from expressing your feelings more directly? Often, our fear of rejection keeps us stuck in this language of signs, hoping the other person will decipher what we don't have the courage to say out loud. There's a beauty in subtlety for sure, but there's also a liberating power in owning your authenticity. Philosopher Martin Buber talked about the I-thou relationship, the one where we allow ourselves to be fully authentic with the other person, without masks or games. Maybe it's time to transform those subtle signals into more direct and vulnerable communication. It's also important to remember that these signals, however revealing, should always be interpreted within context. A single isolated manifestation may not mean much, but a consistent pattern over time rarely deceives. Observe carefully, but also with compassion and openness. We're all in some way feeling our way in the dark when it comes to expressing what we feel for others. These subtle signals are sincere attempts to build invisible bridges between two distinct inner worlds. Modern science is confirming what ancient wisdom already knew. We are profoundly connected beings, constantly emitting and receiving signals that go far beyond words. Neuroscience has discovered mirror neurons, specialized brain cells that allow us to attune to others' emotional states. Evolutionary psychology explains how we've developed sophisticated mechanisms for detecting interest and affinity. Quantum physics suggests connections that transcend linear time and space. All these fields converge to a deeper, more nuanced understanding of how we communicate on levels consciousness is only beginning to glimpse. Ultimately, maybe the most important thing isn't just recognizing these signals in others, but developing the ability to be present enough in our own lives to authentically emit them. When we genuinely care about someone, when that person occupies a real and meaningful space in our hearts, we don't need to manufacture or force these signals. They flow naturally, like water down a mountain. Authenticity has an unmistakable quality that transcends techniques or strategies. To continue this journey of self-discovery and understanding of complex human dynamics, subscribe to the channel now and hit the bell for notifications. Remember, true intimacy begins when we learn to perceive not only what's said, but mainly what's communicated in the spaces between words. The universe of subtle signals is infinitely rich for those who develop the eyes to see and the heart to feel. As the little prince said, what is essential is invisible to the eye. But maybe, after this journey we shared today, the invisible has become a little more visible to you. And as you reflect on everything we've shared, allow yourself this final question. What signals have you been sending to those who occupy your thoughts? Because just as we learn to read others, we can also learn to express with more awareness and authenticity what dwells in our own hearts. After all, the dance of human connection always involves two partners, both simultaneously emitting and receiving these subtle signals that reveal so much more than words ever could.